How would Kentucky be affected if there is a federal spending freeze in the future? Kentucky Edition spoke to the left-leaning Kentucky Center for Economic Policy to find out.
I think a lot of folks view federal funding as just impacting lower-income Kentuckians, but it supports jobs in the state. It supports our water and air quality. It supports our education systems, our healthcare systems, our transportation systems. And so, I think it's really important right now to just acknowledge a lot of the ways that the federal government benefits Kentuckians across the board, particularly as Congress right now is considering pretty large-scale cuts to the federal government through the budget process. So, there's sort of two things happening at once here, but I think each informs the other. And we should really appreciate the ways that Kentucky, which per capita receives the fifth largest amount of federal funding in the country, really benefits from this. About 4 out of every $10 we spend in the state budget are federal dollars. We actually spend more in federal dollars as a state than we bring in tax revenue. So it's a very significant portion of the way we care for the Commonwealth. And the people who are most likely to be harmed by this are the most vulnerable and sensitive populations we have. The average person is directly impacted by things like Medicaid and SNAP. I mean, if you work at a grocery store, a significant portion of your revenue comes from SNAP participants. We have around 1 in 7 Kentuckians who are participating in that program. They're using it to buy their groceries. And if that falls off, then that's a real problem. We have 1 in 3 Kentuckians who utilize Medicaid for their health coverage. If Medicaid stops making payments, whole hospitals could shut down. And that means that, healthcare capacity for the entire community dries up. We already have a doctor shortage. Title I funds are federal funds that go to schools in particularly rural and other low-income parts of the state. Those funds are currently supporting positions in those schools that offer extra supports to students, things like intervention services. So if your child is getting, help with their reading or their math right now in a Title I school, and that money dries up, then you're going to be out of luck. We also have about $4.5 billion on top of what we spend through the state budget in ongoing infrastructure and energy projects throughout the state. The Brent Spence Bridge is a great example of that one. Now, that $250 million in federal funding that's going toward the Brent Spence Bridge isn't the entirety of funding that's going to that project, but certainly without those federal funds, it would grind to a crawl at the minimum.
The Kentucky Center for Economic Policy says Kentucky's federal grants for 2025 total $22 billion.